Today's podcast is sponsored by Genesis, the most comprehensive and complete education for pool professionals. The Genesis Career Pathway for Pool Builders and Design Professionals puts your team on the right track to become masters of their trade.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Trusty, and today I'm rejoined once again by special guest, veteran pool and landscape designer, Kirk Bianchi. It's a pleasure to have you with us back on the show today, Kirk.
Thank you. Good to be here with you.
Recently, we watched Kirk take home the win at the $1 Million Pool Challenge at this year's International Pool Spa Patio Expo that was hosted in Las Vegas, Nevada. Kirk, first off, congratulations again on taking home first place. It was such an impressive field of designers this year. When you first read the scenario for this design challenge, what part of that narrative kind of inspired your approach or sparked your initial ideas for your entry this year?
Well, in previous years, I looked to join and it just didn't work out from a timing point of view. But this year, I got on early enough and I was really inspired. It was a beautiful house with a very clear architectural theme, really like a Mies van der Rohe Farnsworth house. So it had a really clear language to the house as opposed to some of what we encounter in the real world more frequently. That was inspiring. And what a beautiful lot. It's up on a hillside in Napa with 360 grassland views and live oaks. So a magnificent setting that really made it. So I knew that I could pull off something really beautiful as an end result and not be handcuffed by any unpleasant perimeter things we had to block. It was just a beautiful setting with a beautiful house. So that made for an inspiring launch.
Yeah, definitely set the backdrop for a beautiful canvas for you guys to design them. You've got such a distinctive, restrained aesthetic. I mean, modern, but really deeply connected to the landscape. The brief sets up two kind of distinct aesthetic personalities. One of the homeowners was rustic, one likes a more modern look and feel. How did you kind of interpret that contrast between the two and turn it into a cohesive design language that these judges could understand?
Yeah, that's a real significant factor in the work that I do that maybe is missing from most. When I talk to pool builders, like, hey, how did you come up with that design? Well, the homeowner made me do it. I didn't want to do that. And I realized that they're not acting like a referee or a coach, like a mentor, like a fashion consultant, if you will, to their client. They're just there to assemble a bunch of features. And I set up the relationship that I have with my clients based on my mentor in high school architectural drafting taught me you must have an overarching theme. What is your concept? And then it runs through your entire program. Like you're writing a song, you're writing a piece of music, and then something may pop into your head that's another divergent theme. We'll record it, write it down, and then ask, does this belong? And if not, then you write another song built around that. You don't bring it into the mix of what you've already established is the theme or the music that you've already started. Everything has to have a motif, and they call it a parti in architecture, a fancy word for having a theme or a concept. So when these two were collided intentionally to see how you would handle it, that was the first question that I had. The home has already got a very clear language about it. It's this Mies van der Rohe Farnsworth style house, the glass box levitating off the land like a Japanese home does. It was familiar to me in that regard. It already had a beautiful language. And then comes the other homeowner, but I like Rocky Mountain rustic, and he's not represented yet. So we have opportunities to create these other structures, the guest houses, the pool pavilion. We have the wellness retreat. There's these other structures that are going to show up in the property. Do these divert and try to appease him? No. My hierarchy of approach was, we know we're going to have site walls. We know we're going to have retaining walls. We've got all 9 feet of elevation change from the front door to the house. How are we going to terrace this land? And that's where, okay, looked up Napa retaining walls, natural stone. They use a lot of basalt as a native stone material in their landscape for retaining walls that's indigenous to that area. So that, okay, here's where we're going to speak to his language. We're going to do that in the retaining walls and how we terrace the land. And then the homes, all of the modules of the homes float above the stone and maintain the music that the main house had. We're not going to deviate and throw a curveball. We're going to create a hierarchy from the land up to the glass box floating. That was the answer.
that Napa inspired setting had that beautiful topography and the vineyard is the backdrop for the context. How did the landscape that the judges set forth for this year's entries kind of shape your spatial layout, your material choices?
Yeah, so we talked about the stone walls. That was pervasive throughout. There's already a combination of live oak common to Napa, these beautiful, picturesque bonsai like oak trees here and there around the perimeter. But in between is just open grasslands with view corridors that were really amazing to the hillsides beyond that we wanted to maintain. So one of the early things I had to figure out, well, I like to place architecture early and I like to place trees early to work from the outside in and not block any views. And so strategically, those were my first efforts. If I'm going to have any more trees, where do they go? So that you maybe enjoy seeing a beautiful oak tree from the front door that's reflected in maybe a body of water. We don't know, that hasn't arrived yet. I actually placed these trees coming out of the front yard, from the front door, looking out the back, looking to the left, and then positioning the architectural pavilions to where they didn't block views. The trees were placed so they didn't block views either. They were framing views of peaks and view corridors in the distance. So they all had to nestle in to this already existing landscape and not look manufactured. That was the key. It just looked like we were just nestling into what was there, and it was a perfect alignment.
You mentioned waiting till you hear that music. So it sounds like you kind of design from emotion first. How quickly does that kind of start to take physical form for you once you get going?
Yeah, it's from my art history background and photography background. I know that we experience the world looking through the lens of a camera. Like you're in the space and foreground, middle ground, and background. Wherever you look, it goes with you. And you have to marry those three layers wherever you look. The impact of any space is how those three layers align. I mean, everyone gets all excited. Oh my gosh, the planets are in alignment. It's this uncanny thing in nature that happens every once in a while. So when you do that intentionally in your landscape, it's pretty riveting, when you look down the long axis of a pool and you see an oak tree and it's mirrored by the landscape lighting at night. It's breathtaking. It really stops people in their tracks. So, yes, I absolutely want to capture these emotional impact moments from these key vantage points as you walk through a space. And that's very orchestrated, very choreographed, very intentional. How you land these landscape elements in the yard and then locate the pool as a mirror to accentuate that. That's really the play from the beginning that I work around.
Kirk, can you walk us through your design a little bit and explain what you designed?
Yeah. Well, the first thing right off, after deciding I knew the materials were going to be the stone walls, I knew we have to preserve views and frame views. With that intention in mind, the first things that had to happen is how are we going to not block views? Okay, a few trees go in that I want to reflect from certain view corridors inside. But what about these pavilions? We have potential three guest houses, we have a wellness center, and we have a pavilion by the pool. That's five outbuildings that are going to be in this property. Where are they going to live? And they have to be under 1,000 square feet. And are we going to set up a new theme? No. All right, look to the house. Is it giving us any hints? Yes. The entire master bedroom wing and the living room, the footprint of that piece of the house was already just right at the square footage of the 1,000 feet limit. And it already occupied the square footage and the layout. You could literally copy and paste and as a module, work it around the perimeter of the property, what the guest houses would be, what the yoga pavilion would be, and the pool pavilion was the exact same profile as well. So the post and beam layout, the roof structure, the same musical repertoire that was in the house could be woven through like a thread in a garment throughout the property by cloning and locating these pieces. Then it's a matter of, okay, where do they land? The pool pavilion had the most potential to block views because the house is all glass. The kitchen inside the house blocks views from the living room. So that was a hidden moment. So I knew it had to go to the left, and I knew it didn't want to block views from the office. So it had to go a little further to the left, which I believe is west, if I'm remembering correctly. And that located the outdoor kitchen, which in turn located the swim up bar because the swim up bar had to be in proximity to the kitchen, that request. which then tells you the orientation of the pool had to be along that long east to west axis, we're going to call it, so that the swim up bar and the pool and the outdoor kitchen were all as a unit. And all of those elements aligned to the posts and the beams and the window spacing that was in the house. All of those lines were projected out into the lot so that there's this magical framework that you don't see, but as you move through a space, you perceive, wow, everything belongs here. It's all in alignment with each other. And you don't quite know this intellectually, but you just feel it. It just makes sense when you walk through a space like that. So that's how I laid it out. The big stuff went in first, the pool pavilion, and then the pool, and then working your way out to, okay, well, the bocce court follows suit. The spa was an anomaly because a 12-person spa is pretty big anyway, but it wasn't big enough to serve as a mirror that I wanted. So I cut it into a larger piece, an overflowing rectangle that was much larger, but only like a half-inch deep. It's a flooded deck, so you're not having to heat it. It's its own overflowing entity that's part of the pool. But carved into that is the spa that you heat. That way you get a big mirror that you see from the front door as you walk through the space. You see the living room, and then you walk out to this large reflective body of water, but only a sliver of it is the spa. And of course, it's the anomaly. It's a circle in the midst of rectangles and linear elements. So that was a little fun shift there. The wellness center was a little bit of a tricky element because the master bedroom is only 8 inches away from the main public space. It's a steel post on the house that is all glass. All right, everything to the left of this post is public and everything to the right is private. How are you going to change from public space to private space in 8 inches? There's no transition. So I didn't want to put a gate or a wall. That's where you lean on landscape. So the landscape there is 3 feet high in a raised stone wall that's adjacent to the spa. So when you're in the spa, you can't look through into the master bedroom side. There's a louvered gate that acts kind of like Venetian blinds. When you're straight on, you see right through it. You don't feel closed in. But as soon as you get askew at a diagonal, you cannot look into the master bedroom from the spa, nor vice versa. You have privacy by means of this louvered gate. So that's the only physical barrier between the spaces, is that transition. That was a little tricky to work out because I wanted everything to feel, like I said, open and vast and not caged in. So that was a tricky moment to achieve. And all of the activities around the swimming in place and yoga studio, all of that happens off the wellness center, which is situated by the master bedroom. The cold plunges and all of that were part of you wake up in the morning and you go work out. You don't have to go anywhere else. You're part of that location already.
The design that I saw at your public spaces looked really warm and inviting. You had a great separation between public and private spaces. But I think even for a guy who's primarily designing out of Arizona, you really nailed the mindset of the California homeowners, all right, especially in Napa. You're buying that view. I know it's very similar in your neck of the woods, all right, so you want to keep that plan open so that you can appreciate what you bought back there. So I think you really hit the nail on the head there. But I really remember the audience really reacting to how you worked fire into the design. I mean, how do you approach using it as both a focal point and a unifying design element?
Yeah, I'm cautious with moving fire and moving water. It's easy to overdo it and think of it as salt. You want just enough to do the effect. I love to use fire where you can have people gather as opposed to fire bowls and torches everywhere. Because it's alive and illuminated and moving, it has all of these things amplifying its effect of, hey, look at me. Don't look at the primary view. Don't look at the view. Look at me. It's very distracting if you use it too much. So use it carefully to draw people to the hearth. Where are we going to hang out? Where will it warm me? Where will it provide beautiful ambient lighting? That's how I use fire. So, all right, you're in the spa, and that's a nice romantic potential getaway. So how do we create illumination in the evening? Rather than building a feature, I like to hide things. There was a slot gap between the spa and the stone wall. So just slipping in a linear fire you don't even see the source of it. It's simply emerging out of that separation between those two elements. So when you're in the spa, you see the flame at eye level mirrored in the water. That was the effect of that location. So it's a beautiful light. It's soft and low. And it's not a built feature that is off. It's like, what is that? It's a thing that's off. I wanted it to just disappear and be gone when it was not running. Similarly, we have the fireplace was that Rocky Mountain rustic opportunity going vertical. We had the fireplace in the pool pavilion, and it's a double-sided fireplace that serves the kitchen area on the other side. And at first moment, well, it's a see-through, and so you're on the one side looking through at the back of chairs. That wasn't very attractive. So using a stainless steel polished sculpture inside the fire created this shimmering element that would be illuminated by the flames that also provided a shield and a visual block. So when you're in one space, you're not really looking through to the other. You have this artistic curvaceous element inside the fire that's catching the light, and it's a room divider. But the fireplace does serve both sides, so that was a way to block that hole, if you will, with an artful piece. And then the fire pit, which is the more social area when you first come out of the house, was following along that rectangular planks of the house. It was a chrome rectangular box, so it's reflecting the light, and it's almost invisible because it's polished and it's floating. It's taking on the colors of its environment. And it's long enough to seat 6 people on a side. And here's another opportunity for the Rocky Mountain rustic was the sitting on either side was a hewn log cut in half, polished, flamed, stained. So you've taken this pristine glass and steel house and you've injected various moments of rustic furniture hewn from the land into the scene. So you have the polished mirror of the fire pit, linear, and flanking it are the logs, like a log cabin, but they're refined. They're not totally rustic. They're elevated and treated as a sitting opportunity. Those are repeated out by the bocce court. So the other fire element was the elliptical bowl floating in the water at the yoga pavilion. So it's softer, it's elliptical, it's not rectangular, kind of like the yoga thing, little flow going on. So the ellipse floating in the water was more of a meditative fire element just off of the platform in the grass where you could do the yoga workouts. And it was on alignment with the water features in the background. So the distinction is in the flavor of how you experience the fire. What's the mood? We got the meditative yoga, you got the fire, which is community, you've got the fireplace. These are different types of experiences, different types of occasions, but the common theme is the fire was adjacent to an activity where people would be gathering and be present. It was not fire smeared around everywhere recklessly. I really want to emphasize that just use it sparingly and make it count.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like fire for the sake of fire. I mean, I really appreciate the forward thinking approach that you had towards like how these hypothetical clients would be using the space, all these little elements that you used. I mean, it's really like music, like you said. I mean, it's all these little separate things that when combined together create the symphony of what you're trying to create in that backyard. And I think just the way that you approach creating all these little quadrants, the unexpected surprises and some of the elements that you created back there. I mean, that's really a design that just kind of keeps giving the more you get into it. And that's something that I could really appreciate. One of the toughest aspects of this particular challenge was creating something really tranquil for the homeowners while also accommodating small groups and Airbnb usage. I mean, how do you achieve that kind of balance of serenity and the kind of functionality that they're looking in this space?
Yeah, we touched on the master bedroom separation already, and that's one of my college projects was the transition from one extreme to the other. They had a hypothetical Dionysus space that embodied his character, and then you had to migrate to a space that embodied Apollo, which was regal, and you had the party scene converting to a regal, majestic character. And how do you transition between? So there was a dissolving of one and a building of the other as you moved from one space to the other. That was a great project that I kind of use every day. But it really leans on the transition spaces in between to build. Think of a commute. You go to work. Commutes are sometimes darn useful. They allow you to decompress from the day on your way home and you mentally shift gears. And now you got to maybe handle the kids that are going to greet you at the front door. You don't want to be thinking about your meeting by the time you get home. You need to be in a different mood, a different place. So you need these transitional moments. So the emphasis is on how you transition from one place to another and having room to progress on a journey. So I knew I'm appreciative that they gave us a lot that had the space to put the guest homes around the furthest perimeter as you enter the lot. It wasn't having to be mashed right up against the living space. We could have these pavilions around the perimeter of the property to the far right each with their own view and separate from each other with transitional spaces between them. So nobody felt right on top of each other. Isn't that a nice thing that we don't often get in urban situations? But even in a short space, you can create a transitional experience, like we did with the master bedroom, using the landscape and the louvered gates to create a little slice of view beyond. But it happened abruptly, but it was a moment where you had to go through a gate. But by having them separated from the living space, and they had their own garden spaces, and then they could go to the yoga pavilion as they wanted to maybe use the on-site amenities. If I were a guest staying here, I want to go to the gym, I want to use the exercise pool. They had a garden path that would lead you along and up. This had a stairway and through a gate. And when you arrive at the top of the stairs, you're greeted with the fire pit that's on center with that approach. So there's a little bit of a ceremonial sense of arrival. As you ascend the stairs, you're greeted with that fire pit and the mirror and the view beyond. Those things are all synchronized so that as you experience them, there's something that leads you through. You see something in the distance that you focus your eyes on. Maybe it's a tree, a mirror in water, a fire element, a sculpture. It pulls you through because your eyes fix on it, and it's like a lighthouse. You get to fix on that element and it pulls you through this walkway that you have to travel along, but you have a goal. You have something to see and go to. And that's how you lead people through a space. Is you give them something in the distance that captures their interest and you lead them to it. And that's a big part of how these buildings had to land on the site. It was, I'm starting this journey and it's 100, 200 feet away. What do I see that will pull me towards it? And then I see more
Right.
and it unveils. That's the journey.
You're creating that lit path for them. I know for a lot of the designers in the higher echelon and they're doing the luxury projects, a lot of the times you're not even doing their primary home. I mean, do you find yourself designing more hybrid use spaces like this now that luxury rentals are becoming even more common?
Yes, here and there. I was just doing a recent project. It was for the owner. They were working out in the garage. They didn't have a gym and they wanted a guest house. So we built a basement because they were up against their square footage. So we built a basement gym. However, who wants to work out in the basement in Arizona? You want the morning light, you want open air. So we did a walkout courtyard basement that was the best scene in the whole property. It was you ascend down these stairs floating over a reflection pond at the lower level, and there's water walls descending down these retaining walls. As you go down, it's a lot like the Fort Worth water gardens, the tranquil water gardens there, that the water's weeping down as you descend this stairway that's floating. And then the gym was this entire glass pavilion that the whole wall open, and so it had mirrors in the background, which doubled the space. I mean, it was the best seat in the house. So I was motivating them to go work out. They had to walk a couple hundred feet. Oops, it's a shame. To go from their master bedroom to their guest house down into a basement. I knew that was going to be a psychological deterrent for them to work out because you got to go through all these hoops and it becomes friction in your routine. So I had to make the space so appealing. They couldn't wait to get over there and never have to leave. So that was a very recent project that embodied a lot of these elements.
I want to pick at that a little bit more. I mean, one of the trickiest parts of this particular scenario was balancing private retreat with rental potential. I mean, with many homeowners, I think that's about as realistic a scenario as you can get these days. I mean, how do you kind of address that dual purpose real world challenge in your concept?
Yeah, so for sure, the privacy and location. Everybody has their own space and you don't feel like you're in each other's living room. That was key. And how the buildings aligned, their views were oriented away from each other, looking at the landscape. So when you're in each space, you're not looking right at your neighbor. You had a view. So how you orient the spaces and what you're looking at versus where you use privacy walls can really create this separation and the privacy, even though you may be in close proximity to each other. And then for sure, giving each home their own little garden space, it makes them feel this is the Japanese are masters of this. They all live on top of each other and they have these little courtyards between their homes. And they have these little micro gardens, meditation gardens in their little places that are miniature. I mean, that's where bonsai came from, is these miniature landscapes. And they're captivating. They're amazing. And you feel like you have your own little piece of the redwood forest in your courtyard, just the way they manipulate the space. And it's wonderful how they do that. That was really what I gleaned from my trip to Japan is you can create intentional courtyards and private spaces if you know how to sequence and direct your view and then give you something to look at once you're there.
Let's get into the design itself. I mean, the presentation just wowed everybody. You're always so meticulous in your approach to your presentations. Was there anything new that you tried for this competition or different in your approach that you did specifically for this exercise?
Well, I think the expansive water was a new thing. I mean, it's something that I've done a little bit before, but I haven't had a chance to do it a lot. And that's what I did with the spa. The inside of the spa, that's the part you heat. We all think practical. I don't want a huge body of water that I have to heat spontaneously. That's going to take 2 hours, then the mood will pass. So you want your spas to be just big enough to suit the quantity, but the outside of the spa, the outer rim, if it's overflowing, does not have to match the interior diameter. You can use a very shallow body of water spread over a large surface area to make what you might call the spa. The whole thing works together as the spa, but it's 30 feet by 30 feet square maybe, but only 8 by 8 is the part you heat. So who said the inside of a spa had to match the outside of it? It became a visual reflection pond body of water that served its purpose as a mirror in the landscape, but you only had to heat part of it. So that was a fun play. I've done that once or twice, and I did it in a greater way here.
I think competitions like this are particularly hard for designers because, I mean, you want to throw everything you can at it, but I mean, there's got to be a point when you know when to stop, when that design is resolved. I mean, you don't want to just go the sky is the limit. And I think that's what we saw in your design was something that, yeah, I would have this in my backyard. I mean, from a storytelling standpoint, what element do you think best captures the spirit of this challenge? I mean, what resonated the most with the judges and those you spoke with after this competition was over?
Yeah, I remember feedback from the audience was they were struggling with how to address the divergent requests of the owner, the Rocky Mountain rustic aesthetic, when the home had a clear language that was not that. How do you bring those together? And so that was a significant theme I had to figure out before I even started drawing is how am I going to address that? Because thanks to Charlie Streckbein and his mentoring in 1984 through 88, that was the guy, a college student, architecture student who preceded me. The number one thing that he said as he was mentoring me through my architecture competitions that I had in high school, you must have a theme. You must have a concept. It's the belt that girds the garment and ties everything together. And if you have a divergent idea, save it for another project. You must decide on a theme and then stay true to that theme throughout this piece of music that you're writing. Otherwise, it's a mishmash and it's noise and it's a train wreck and a collision. So that's 40 years ago he did that. And I'm still using that core principle today. And to my peers, I think that's where we struggle the most is we get a client with a wish list and then they point their gun at our feet and they expect us to dance. Good luck trying to marry all these things together, and you fail if you don't make me happy. And you actually have to step up and say, this doesn't align. This doesn't match. This doesn't belong in this mix. I've told clients, buy another house and we'll do it there. And you have to have the courage to do that and have the rationale to show them exactly as I'm describing it to you. They get the music metaphor. Okay, I get it. And that really applied to this house, this project was truly an exercise in that. The house is very edited, very thematic, very minimal. The music was already in the house. And if you have ears and eyes to notice that, it kind of lended itself to, shall I say, designing itself. If you carry that language out into the landscape, you will constantly have a way to vet any of the ideas that were coming into your head. Does this belong? No, it's divergent. It doesn't match the music. So that's really what I had to hold myself to the whole time I was doing project was having that underlying framework and recurring theme.
Sure. I mean, when you look back at your concept as a whole, I mean, which aspect best captures your design philosophy? The one element that for you made it uniquely a Kirk Bianchi design.
For sure, borrowing the math from the house. All of the view corridors aligned from inside the house, a lot of the pool and edge of deck and edge of masonry walls, all of these edges aligned to significant anchors and modules of math that were dictated by the house, so that as you walk through the space, you feel like you're walking through a poem, a piece of music. Everything had alignments. And as you walk through the space, you notice this 100 yards away. Oh my gosh, this line that travels the whole length of the property lines up with that tree in the distance. And you go, look at that. And you didn't know it until you stood there. So as it unfolds, as you walk through it, these alignments show up and you catch it and you go, oh, look, it's just magic. You see these things that are surprises that reveal themselves. And it's because of pulling the math from the house and carrying the lines out into the landscape and then being vigilant to keep those alignments as you work through the design so that they don't get lost.
You mentioned after the competition was over that you love contests like this because they bring back the competitive streak that you had in you when you were a much younger man. I mean, competitions like this really push the creative envelope for guys in the industry. How do you see design challenges like the $1 million pool design challenge influencing the next generation of pool and landscape designers?
Yeah, I think it's really significant. I mean, I had architectural design competitions all through high school. We had a great architectural program in high school. What a great start. 3-hour class every day, all 4 years. And we had significant architectural design projects that we submitted back then, and they were fantastic. I mean, they were very challenging and they gave you an outlet to focus your energies and your ideas in a way that it's like, it's better if you have a race to run than to just run for no good reason, to get up every morning and just run because you should. If you have a race to run, a reason to train, it just gives you something to look forward to, a social celebrated event.
Well, I think a lot of guys appreciated having you as a competitor in this year's competition. I mean, you're a very visible face out there. You're teaching Genesis classes. I mean, a lot of guys look up to you as a mentor. I know that you're developing even a new mentor site. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I heard it's kind of a personal trainer for design in that regard.
Yeah, I had a mentor in high school, these competitions. A guy who had graduated, was already in architecture in college, would come around and kind of mentor the students in high school. And he took me under his wing. I said, "Hey, man, can I come to your house and work on these projects with you?" He's doing his college assignments, and I'm witnessing him do his. And then he's over my shoulder critiquing me. And he said, "Kirk, you got to have a theme. You got to have a concept. You can't just do it because it's cool. You need to have a better reason than that. Make this better." And he kept pushing me to unify my work and have it be consistent. And because of that, Charlie Streckbein, thank you very much. 40 years later, that's still my core principle. So my thing that I want to do these next few decades is save one homeowner at a time from the chaos that's being perpetuated in our industry with just smashing elements into backyards that don't belong together. It pains me when I know what's possible. People are spending their fortunes that they've amassed for decades and they're just winging it. Come on, this is a very significant moment, people. Let's rise to the occasion. But we need training. No one's teaching this, even in architecture school and landscape architecture. They're not. I'm pulling ideas from different disciplines, photography and art history and composition. It's not even taught in landscape architecture school. They treat that more like urban planning. So the home garden design theory, that's the basis of my Genesis class, is the 12 steps that I use to go through that I've honed over the years to how do I sequentially think about every project, and it's in the same order. If you do it again and again, you realize there's a pattern, and that's how I can impart this to others. So I invite you to check that out. There's one in March coming up. But the thing that I'm doing in the near term on kirkbianchi.com, I'm creating a membership where we can all get together once or twice a month. I'm going to do what Charlie did for me. I'm going to mentor anybody that wants to hang. We're going to look at case studies together. We're going to look at designs together. Bring your work, and we're going to literally pin it to the wall. And we're going to critique each other's work. I'm going to lead you through the process, and we're going to make everybody's work better. And then you can turn it around and sell it to your clients and command better fees. So let's shave a decade or 2 or 3 off of your work process, because I feel burdened by the mad rush to get to contract. People are skipping over design just to feed the engine of construction. That's how we get paid and make our living. But if you stop long enough to do a really amazing design, what a beautiful gift to your clients that they're doing this once or twice in their lifetime. And then that's what you become known for. So I invite you to come check out kirkbianchi.com and sign up for the atelier, which is the fancy French word for art studio. And that's my burden for the next 20 years, is I need to get this stuff out of my head and out to everybody out there who maybe hasn't had a mentor, to challenge them to be the best version of themselves that they can, because this is a beautiful craft when it's done well.
That's very exciting. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of guys out there that are going to be eager to tap that wealth of knowledge and intellectual brain power that you have there in regards to their own projects and get some feedback, learn how to refine their designs, make them better. You're going to be returning next year as one of the judges for the $1 Million Pool Design Challenge. I mean, having been on the other side of the spectrum, I mean, what do you think you'll be looking for in next year's winning design?
The thing that we've talked about today the most, what's been missing in the industry, and what my mentor imparted to me is the criteria that you can't just check a bunch of boxes on your client's wish list and say that you did a good design. A good design is like writing music. So for next year's students, and I'm going to make a video of the breakdown of how I did this design. It's going to be on my website, kirkbianchi.com, coming up in the near future. And I'm going to ask next year's students to be sure that there is a recurring theme that runs throughout their design. And it's got to pull from the house. It's got to align all of these elements together like a song. And that is the basis on which a successful design will really be amplified, magnified. You got to check the boxes, but how you think of those as the instruments. You got all these instruments that are going to play in your band. Who's going to write the music? It's your job as the designer to write the music that they all play off of so that they are blending beautifully together and not clashing. That's the big piece that's missing in our industry, is just reconciling all these divergent elements and getting them to play nice with each other. That's the hardest thing about what we do. So I hope to impart that through the explanatory video that will be on my website, as well as the atelier. And I'm going to ask the students next year, that will be the recurring theme of my critique as I am on the judging panel. That's what I will be looking for. So that's the next bar. Hope we all grab it.
Awesome. Well, that's about all the time that we have left for today. Kirk, thanks so much for spending some time with us to chat a little bit more about your design. Really great connecting with you today.
Really pleasure to be here. This really lights me up. I like beautiful places. They're inspiring. It's my gift, and it doesn't do me any good to just keep it locked here. So I love sharing it with you all, and I hope you go out and deliver it to your clients.
Well, thanks to all of you for listening in today. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Genesis, the most comprehensive and complete education for pool professionals. The Genesis career pathway for pool builders and design professionals puts your team on the right track to become masters of their trade.